Get better.
I know it. And your boy was right about that.
The cat who wrote that book. What's that book?
Okay, John, whenever you're ready to go.
Good afternoon. It's John Tucker and Dr. Larry McCrory again. Today we're going to be doing a little different format, dealing with our favorite or unfavorite subject. As some of you who read newspaper have understood, that there's been quite a controversy in the past month around the Vermont Commission on Human Rights. Dr. McCrory is one of the founding members of this commission and was on the original board. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McCrory. And Larry, what has been the gist of this whole thing with the governor and so forth? Would you give some history?
Well, as you said, I was a charter member, not a founding
member, charter member.
A charter member of the Human Rights Commission, and the thing I think which distinguished that particular panel was that it was as diverse as you could make 5 people.
Okay.
And there are only 5.
Right.
And obviously you cannot get every aspect of diversity into it. But there was a consciousness about the need for diversity. As a matter of fact, built into it legally was the one rule that there could be no more than 3 people from any major party. In other words, not more than 3 Democrats and so forth. So there was a need to keep some political diversity on it. But since this commission was set up to guard against discrimination, it seems to me imperative that the body be as diverse and reflective of the parties who are seeking relief as possible. And I think that sentiment really undergirded the putting together of that first panel, that first group of 5. And that was maintained, at least in my tenure there and beyond my tenure there. I was reappointed twice.
Now, who appointed you and reappointed you?
Governor Dean. And I was reappointed the first time for another 4 years, and then when my second term expired, I was reappointed for yet another. At that point, I had served, I thought, long enough, and I was desperately trying to get off because I had other things that I was trying to do and so forth. And so I sent Governor Dean he asked me for some suggestions of replacement for me. I sent him 3 names, 2 women, 1 man, all black. He actually made the appointment of a black woman from St. Michael's. And that worked well. And then I think when she eventually left, yet another person was appointed who was black. And so there was then...
This was a man.
That's right.
Right.
Mr. Christie.
Yes.
And there was then at least a feeling that was very, very strong that this group should be as representative of the people who were seeking relief as possible, and for all kinds of reasons there was an attempt to keep it that way, to keep both men and women, for example. So you had the gender kind of diversity. We had racial diversity. We had sexual orientation diversity. When I was there, we had a gay person on. Very, very important. Now, Governor Douglas saw no need. I assume he saw either no or little need for trying to maintain at least racial diversity. And so he, when it came time to either reappoint Mr. Christie or not appoint him, he chose not to reappoint him and chose a white lawyer to replace him.
Had he given any reasons why Mr. Christie couldn't be reappointed?
No, I've never seen that, nor have I heard anything from Mr. Christie to indicate that he was told why he wasn't reappointed. As a matter of fact, what I read, at least, was that it came as a complete shock to him that he was not reappointed. So maybe there were real reasons why he wasn't. I have no idea. But that's not the point that I want to make. Let's assume that there were reasons why he was not reappointed. I still believe that the principle underlying the whole business of appointment has to do with trying to maintain as much diversity as possible within the framework of a five-person panel. And so to replace him with yet another white person seems wrong to me. Now, I want to make a point, because one of the things that the governor said in this whole back and forth issue is that he, the governor, seeks people who are the most highly qualified people that he can find. Now, there's nothing at all wrong with that, and nobody is finding fault with any individual. No one that I have seen has called into attention, or who has said or implied in any way that the person who was the replacement, the lawyer Barbara Prentice, I believe her name was, that there was anything wrong with her. Of course there's nothing wrong with her. She may be the most highly qualified person that he could find. That isn't the point. It's not about a given individual commissioner. It's about maintaining some kind of balance across that whole commission. And so I thought that it was a terrible thing to do.
Did the governor make a comment?
Yeah, he made a comment, and that was his comment. And
He said that,
at least
he's made another
through
comment.
a spokesperson, a spokesperson of the governor said that the governor makes all of his appointments based on the highest quality people he can find. Again, no one is finding fault with that.
Where did this other comment get in the paper?
Which other comment?
He didn't know race
The question is race
have anything to do with human rights.
Yes. Which I can only assume. I mean, it was said that the governor asked that question. The governor himself didn't ask that question, but a spokesperson for the governor asked that question as if that were coming from the governor. And if that had been coming from the governor, then I have to say that there is a terrible lack of understanding.
Well, I'm going to go further.
In this whole issue, okay? Because in point of fact, nothing could be more a human rights issue in this country and in this state
And
than racial
I
equity.
think it's the kind of, and I think that, you thing that in your 30-some years of living in the state that you have run in from time to time, that goes on constantly here. It lowers itself, it raises itself, but it's a constant barrier. That we have people in this state that get in positions of power who will not recognize racism
Yes.
as a real issue.
Well, it's a real issue. In that sense, it's also a real issue in the sense that there is an incredible, probably more than any other place I've ever lived, an incredible denial of racism. So one, a lack of recognition of racism, but also when it is brought up, when people are told that in fact these are some of the forces that one has to live with and work with if one is a so-called minority in this, a racial minority in this state, is that there is a denial that it exists. And
So-
that's a very difficult
Yeah,
thing
but
to overcome.
I'm asking you another question. I don't think all denials, I think denial sometimes is innocent denial, but I also think there's malicious denial.
Oh, I'm not arguing that point.
And I don't think this was innocent denial, Dr.
Well,
McCrory.
I have no idea what it was. I don't want to call it anything that I don't know it was. But whatever it was wrong. And I thought it was it was very important, at least to me, that the Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Doobie, even understood that point. And in point of fact, disagreed with the governor over this decision. And again, not about the person appointed. It's not about that. And I'm tired of people trying to sidetrack it to that issue. Nobody is complaining about the individual. Has nothing to do with it. It has to do with a group of people and trying to maintain balance across that group in as many dimensions as one can, given the fact that there's a limit of 5 people. So you wouldn't want all women or all men.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think everybody is qualified in the way that the governor is talking about to even be knowledgeable
Oh, you see, that's
or
another
good about racism?
You see, that's another that's another dimension to this whole business. And my answer to you is, of course not. Of course not. And you see, there are all kind of ways of being qualified. One can be qualified in the sense that one is a lawyer and therefore understands the legal ramifications of something. That does not mean that they're qualified
To deal with racism.
to deal with racism or any other ism, Now, what I said, my argument was, and incidentally other people have made the same argument, that there are at least 2 reasons for trying to maintain this kind of balance across that particular group, the Human Rights Commission. One is representational, and that has to do with trying to create a subjective feeling in those people who are appearing before the commission that they're likely to be heard and understood. I mean, one comes into that setting and one faces these 5 people. And if a black person, for example, is the person who is bringing a problem before this commission, and he or she sees a black face there, at least that person has a subjective feeling that he or she is not going to hear the same garbage that he or she has heard all of their lifetime. That here comes another snow job and so forth. That one at least feels that one has a chance of being heard and being understood. As a matter of fact, Mr. Christie made that argument, and it's a very valid one.
But I'm going to throw you a curve right now.
Well, wait a minute, though. Let me just finish, and then you can throw me any curve you want. The other is educational, and this has to do with what you were getting at a little earlier, I think, and that is that those on the commission, it is important that we, in the case when I was there, had access to the collegial diverse views. In other words, I may not understand all of the ramifications and all of the little things about a woman who may feel that she has been discriminated against in some way out there in society. I may not be sensitive to all those little ways that she has learned to live with all of her life. But if I have a woman colleague on that commission, if it's not just 5 men sitting there, but in fact a woman or 2 or 3, they can help me understand. They can increase my sensitivity to what women must go through in this society and must feel. And that can sharpen my view in terms of making judgment. So that's what I mean by educational. We educated each other, and that is the importance of having that kind of diversity on that commission.
I have a comment that I would like to ask.
Go ahead.
and I've stayed away from the political side. Jim Douglas is a Republican. And I would be really scared to death if he put some of the kind of black people I've seen this administration in Washington into, or the minorities that they put in position of power, because that is what I see the Jim Douglases of the world doing.
Yep, no question about it.
And he would go out and find a Clarence Thomas or a Condoleezza Rice.
There is no question about that, John.
Who would have all the denial in the world.
Listen, I will be the first to admit that merely putting a black person on a commission does not guarantee that that person is going to make the right kinds of decisions either. It's just that since all of us, every one of us in this society, is socialized in a racist environment, all of us carry baggage. I carry baggage. I mean, as much as the world has changed, I still walk into a restaurant and wonder whether I'm going to be served. Because that's the way I grew up. That's the way I was socialized in this country called the United States, okay? So all of us carry baggage. White people carry baggage. They carry the baggage of racism because they're raised, they're socialized in a racist environment. And black people also carry the baggage of racism because they've been victimized by this process. Now, how any of us come out of that, it depends upon our experiences, depends upon opportunities, depends upon all kinds of things, but we all carry baggage. So there is nothing about appointing a black person or a woman, for example. There are Margaret Thatchers,
that's right,
you know, or a woman or a homosexual person or whatever that is going to guarantee that they come down on the right side of things. However, it's a probability statement, and a black person has a higher probability of understanding victimization by racism than a white person has. Doesn't mean white people can't understand it. Doesn't mean that every black person himself or herself does, but it means that there's a higher probability. And to get an all-white group reduces the probability of anybody understanding anything about racism. I'm sorry. That's the way it is. And I keep going back to the gender thing because I'm a man.
I understand.
You know, and
but
doggone it, as much as I want to understand sexism.
You can use a gender thing, and I would use homophobia.
Of course.
As a perfect example of that.
Of course.
I mean, we come, you know, two communities in America are homophobic, and there's homophobia all over the place, and that's why it's important to have gay and lesbian people in these kind of things.
Exactly.
But what I am finding in this state, and I'm finding from the white women, and I need to say this to you, not all gay and lesbian, not all have an insensitivity to race that is amazing to me. It is absolutely amazing to me. And I agree with everything that you've said today. I don't, and I'm going to say it openly. I think that it's typical politics played by a particular party.
I'm not even going that far in what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there ought to be a recognition.
What is the makeup of the board now?
3 lawyers.
White men and white women.
5 people. All white.
Men and women.
Yes.
Are there 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, or is that a makeup?
I don't know what the political makeup of the present group is. I'm sorry. I haven't been that close to it.
Were the whites that were up for reappointment reappointed?
Well, I think only one person was up for reappointment at the time. I think another one is coming up. And you see, and that worries me.
It worries me too, because
it worries me because if there really is a lack of understanding, then you may as well throw, I mean, you may as well throw your hands up in the air and walk away from it.
I don't think it's just lack of understanding, and I don't think
I didn't say
it
it
has
was.
anything to do with other than let's fill this place and let's fill it with one of our own kind. And somebody who thinks right and who's going to be undefeated. And that's why they brought up this whole thing about the person, because it's not by mistake that they put a woman there, a Republican woman. It's not by mistake, because that's the game
Well,
that they play.
yeah, I
You
know.
play one group off against the other.
No, I know that. I mean, I'm not so naive as to
Right.
believe that doesn't happen. I guess one, though, if you have hope at all, you have to think that there is some hope that some things are beyond the kind of stuff you're talking about, okay? And that if you establish a human rights commission, you would like to believe that there can be justice brought. You have to believe. That's the whole thing about judges right now. And your point is well taken. Your point is well taken, because these candidates for the judgeships, or whatever you call those things, that are being put forward by the president are just ridiculous in terms of trying to ensure that any kind of real justice exists. So your point is well taken. I'm not arguing that.
Right.
But one has to hope that this state of Vermont, where
Why?
I live, can rise above
Why?
that sort. I don't know.
What makes you
John,
think-
because not to have that hope is to just walk into the ocean
Out
and
of
forget
50
it.
states,
Oh, I think. Oh,
why do you think Vermont is any different than the rest of
because
America?
I think it is.
Why?
I think it is. I think it is because I feel better here than I would feel in some other state, because the politics of this state, at least in my time here, have been much, much better than, and that doesn't mean race-free, and it doesn't mean racism-free. It doesn't mean that at all. But it means that given the issues that are involved, this state seems to be, at least on the social level, farther along or in front of most of the states. Look how it voted in the last election. That should tell you something.
That's fine, Larry, but look, let's be clear.
I don't want to argue this
No,
point,
let me
though.
finish. I think that this point has to be taken.
I didn't say it shouldn't
Okay.
be. I don't want to argue it.
Okay, I don't want to
Go ahead.
argue it either, but it's a point that has to be taken.
Go
There
ahead.
is a different value. This state has a lot of good qualities. A lot of states have a lot of good qualities.
Okay.
But when it comes to this race, this is my opinion of this state. This state is among the bottom third when it comes to dealing with racial issues and being upfront about them and being honest. About other social issues, yes. And I applaud them for that.
Okay, then let me take a different tack, because you see, it's very difficult to argue with you because I have some of the same feelings you have, okay? And so I'm not going to sit up here and play devil's advocate, because I, honest to goodness, think you're absolutely correct. You're correct about that. However, let me take a different tack. Let me say that what I do have is the feeling that in this state, as compared to other states, things can be changed. In this state, people can have a voice in the very things that we're talking about. Whereas I came here from Illinois, okay? My God, I mean, there's not a snowball's chance. Well, there's not any chance at all that one can bring about the kind of meaningful change that we're talking about. We ought to be able to do it in this state. Now, have we done it? No. But we have done some things which at least move in the right direction. And so I'm not going to sit up here and make believe that this state deals with racism. My goodness, I know better than that. You know that. I mean, I spent the last 40 years fighting people in this state about these very issues, as indeed many of us have. Not just me, but a whole bunch of us here. So I know better than that. However, I honestly believe that the governor ought to at least be made to think about this issue.
Absolutely.
Ought to be made to think about this issue and to at least ponder in his mind, how does one establish a commission which has the most likelihood of bringing about real justice? Now, apparently, he doesn't understand that.
Well,
and it's up to us and everybody in this state to try to help him understand.
Well, let me point out something
And
to
I
you.
can't not do that.
Let me point out something to you. I mean, the governor is who he is.
Yes, I know that.
And consequently, his administration are all people that surround him and advise him, think like him, walk like him, talk like him. But Brian Doobie has made me rethink that, because Brian Doobie doesn't think like he does about this issue and doesn't walk like that.
And you hit on a very sore point with me, because quite frankly, I thought there would be a tremendous outrage. I thought this place would light up. And I looked at that newspaper every day, and one little comment
You know
here,
why they-
which I appreciate.
You know why
but
they
one
won't-
comment here,
You know-
and then nothing, and then nothing, and then one more comment, and then nothing. And it is as if nobody cares.
Well, see, I agree with you. I've made a personal decision as a retired man to live here. And that's my own personal decision. There's a lot of things about this place I find enjoyable. But one thing I'm real clear about is the smallness of this place makes it even more impossible to combat the denial, because they're all friends. They all eat together. They all know each other or know somebody who knows that. And I think back to the whole thing when the guy's son was held at gunpoint at the ground and he was the wrong kid. Remember that whole business?
Of course. And that's
And then the comment that the Attorney General made when talked about the high percentage per capita of blacks in jail in this state, his comment was they must commit more crimes.
yes, of course.
A leading social, and I'm not going to use his name, a person who sees them as a really social fighter, said to one of the black people, "Oh, I know Bill Sorrell. He lives in my neighborhood. He wouldn't be that way." And this guy has come forward a number of times. And what I'm saying is, it changes when it's them. They're all in this together. And the racism operates on both sides. And that's a dangerous thing in this thing for me, because I am so offended by the fact, and I'm also offended by the number of people of color who have kept quiet about this, that live in this state, that haven't raised their voices and objections about it. That bothers me to no end. You have given life's blood to this. I mean, we are friends, and I'm going to say this to the public. We are friends. We have fought many battles together, side by
I
side.
was looking at one of them the other day.
Right.
I was looking at a picture of one of them the other day of you and I, you and me.
And
Yeah.
I am mortified by what I see as a lack of response to this issue. Those kind of stupid statements, because it borders on stupidity. And they knew what they were saying when they said it. And their arrogance is that. Because I liken this to this. The 12-year-old kid just recently who received an email message calling him the nigger.
Right.
Okay, everybody's saying this is happening, but see, and this present generation say, well, I didn't do this. Well, your kids do it. Where did you learn it at?
Right.
Are all of your grandparents and great-grandparents dead?
Right.
Are all of your parents dead who have built their careers, who have built their economy on the fact that 1/12 of the population was eliminated from competition? So I find it just inexcusable. And as a charter member, and I kept looking for certain people to be raising their voices.
Yes.
I haven't heard those certain people.
Yes.
And that's what concerns me in it.
Well,
Is
yeah.
business as usual.
You grabbed onto my soft point. You found the soft underbelly.
Well, but I knew it was a soft underbelly.
Because that has bothered me more than any other aspect of this whole business. And I thought there would be an outpour of this, you see.
And the internalized oppression
and there are very few
by this community of people of color who don't want to do this. They don't want to offend their friends. And see, that's the other problem. You know, when in this state can we get past that when we speak out the truth that we're offending someone? I mean, you know, I've watched things happen over a period of time, and this is a perfect example of this. People who have been given jobs, people who are being paid salaries, people who are being given awards. And from Burlington, we had the Studies Against Racism. You know, where are those people? Where are they at? 250 of them took part, and they all went on. I mean, yeah. You know, they trained their facilitators in 2 hours.
Maybe they're singing.
My point is,
no, I'm serious.
My point is that you are the one person.
No,
I was away when all this happened.
No, I know you weren't here, and I'm not the one person because there was
been a few.
It just wasn't of the magnitude that I would have expected. Okay, I mean I would have expected all kinds of people, not just black people.
Right.
At any rate, I'm more interested in what can be done. And what are we going to do about it? Because this isn't the last time an appointment is going to be made, for goodness sake. I mean, this is...
When is the next appointment due? And that's what we need to find out.
Yeah, I know.
Because this man has made it clear. And what he has said to the black community, he and his administration, is, I can't use a street term on TV because I refuse to do it.
No, don't do that.
But what he has said is that.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't have to have a conversation with any of you about it. And the heck with you. And plus, you're not that important in this state anyway because my political career is not affected by your votes. Because that's another thing it boils down to.
Yep. All of that is correct. I mean, I can't argue with it. I wish we could be better.
I'm saying to the black community, when they all come whining to you when they win those close elections, remember this.
Yeah.
Take this in account. Think about this moment. And Dr. McCrory and myself and a few other brothers are not going to be here forever. But there are things that you need to take stands about. And this is an important issue. Where is the outrage? All these people have gotten all these awards over the past 2 or 3 years that I've watched for their fights for civil rights, for their fights against racism, for their contributions to the community. Where are they? Where are these good people that all these good people turn to solve their problems? Where are their voices at?
Well, you know, for that matter, I'm also, at least in the visible sense, I mean, as much as I can determine, there hasn't been that much outrage to this whole thing you just talked about, the artist's son, who received this awful message on...
You heard the denial there's no racism on cyberspace. Did you know that?
Yeah, I know. The incidents are few and far between, and everybody knows that's not true. Everybody knows that's not true.
But here's the question you and I keep asking, and I'm asking it again. Where do these children learn this behavior at?
Well, of course.
Do they learn it in schools, or do they learn it at home in their community?
They learn it in both places, but they learn it first in their home and in their community. And I mean, I could tell you story after story of kids before they ever get to school.
Right, they know.
Who have pointed to me and said, nigger.
Right.
Okay? Kids that probably don't even know what the word means, but who certainly know the word. Now, where are these parents? And why aren't they bothered by this?
Well, these parents, a lot of them have been told this behavior by their grandparents.
Yeah, I know, John, but I mean, my
And it's
God,
passed on.
Are we to accept that no progress is going to be made in this area at all?
I think that the most painful question for white America to face are two questions, Larry. Native people and Afro-Americans.
Yeah, of course, and those are going to be the issues.
And those will
the
be
hardest ones to
online
solve.
issues for them
They'll be the
because
hardest ones to
unlike a
solve.
lot of other countries, they can't face up to their past, which is why they keep constantly trying to change their history. I mean, they try to take their history and push it down in the ground. You know, these are the only people
Well,
in the
your
world.
friend who wrote Faces at the Bottom of the Well understands this. And of course, what he says is, look, we'll never solve this problem of racism in the United States, but we have to keep fighting it anyway.
I absolutely agree
We have
with
to keep fighting it,
But-
you know, to be able to look in the mirror, but we also have to keep fighting it for those who come after us. And we have to do it. And there's no choice. It's not a question of shall I.
Where's academia at in this?
Oh, please. I mean, please. I mean, you fault me for not recognizing that the political people are not where they should be. Don't get me started on academia.
Well,
My
you know,
God,
academia sees itself.
Please.
I mean, you know, at least the politicians have got to shake hands with and intermingle with the common everyday man.
I mean-
but the academicians and the intellectuals they think they're intellectuals sit there and they don't address these problems.
Well, John, look, yesterday we graduated yet another class from the College of Medicine with not one black person in the class. I mean, and that goes on year after year after year. And you know what? Nobody says a word about it. Nobody's upset about it.
But I heard everybody's upset about the keynote speaker.
Not in the College of Medicine.
Oh, okay, because
Not
I
College
heard
of
at the
Medicine.
commencement, she said, y'all want to get wet because I don't want to get wet, and that's all she
no,
said.
that's different. No, that's different. Actually, they applauded her. They gave her a standing ovation because of that. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the medical school. And they had a good
Wait a
keynote
minute.
speaker. They had a good keynote
So
speaker.
we're going to go into our next.
No. That's up to you. That's up to you. I'm just saying that racism never rises to the level where it is unacceptable. There are excuses made, they're backing off, there's denial, there is, oh, you're reading the wrong message, you're misinterpreting what the whole thing is about. It never rises. How, for example, you tell me this, and the next time I see one of my senators, I'm going to ask this question. How in the world can you treat a person like Strom Thurmond? How can you treat a fellow senator who, for example, belonged to the White Citizens Council or the KKK?
Like Trent Lott.
Like Trent Lott. How can you treat that
Jesse
person with
Helms.
respect? Of course, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I understand why you have to deal with these people. That's a business. That's what you're down there to do. But aside from that real business of the Senate, how can you hang out with these people?
Why
How
not?
can you treat? Because they're despicable people.
But racism doesn't affect white people.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
There you are.
My point is that racism
That's right.
never rises to the level of unacceptability. If anything else happened, if they were a child molester or something like that, they'd be looked at in a despicable, as despicable people. But racism never qualifies.
Let me tell you, and so because you have entered,
very, very depressing.
you have entered into my realm.
It's very depressing.
One is, why doesn't John Tucker always want to discuss diversity?
Yes.
My issue is
I know what your issue is.
a number of
It's
issues.
mine too.
Yeah,
But go ahead.
And it's this very issue that's before us now. You know, there's all these well-meaning people that we talk about, all these self-serving psalm sayers who put salve on black folks' wounds up here and tell them how good they are and play black folks off against each other and everything, so that none of the problems of this community get addressed. See, my problem with, let me just clarify, because we're right where I want to be. My problem with Vermont is not that it's not a nice place in a lot of ways for me to live. I wouldn't be living here. But what my problem is, I have never lived any place where people were so unwilling to really sit down and honestly talk about race. And I lived in some racist places, but they still do it better than Vermonters do when it comes to race. They cover it all with diversity. And you and I know this. We've seen it happen time after time. They started a program to bring teachers back here that ended up being diversity. What I'm saying is that because of the smallness of the state and because of the power of some other minorities that need it, the issue of race in Vermont will always be the last thing that they talk about in the state.
You know, I can't help but listening to you right now, I can't help but be reminded that you and I have a very, very dear friend who teaches in the College of Education.
Right.
Who can actually predict how many seconds it will take when she brings up the whole question of racism in her classes. How many seconds it will take before
a white woman stands up and says, "What about women?"
And the whole thing about racism is gone.
That's right.
It just disappears. It's incredible. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. When you talked about the medical school, as you know, Friday I got released from the hospital, and as people, and I don't mind sharing this because one of the things that I don't think we talk about is chronic illnesses that affect our community. I have chronic heart disease. I've had 2 triple bypasses, and I'm well. But every now and then, every 6 months, my body says, stop what you're doing. The fluid is filling up you, and it's time for you to go back in the hospital. And I just had a friend last night. She left for Florida. She's a white woman who verified some of the stuff that went on at Fletcher Allen. Fletcher Allen is the medical school's teaching hospital, major teacher hospital. Why there's no blacks graduating is obvious. They have a hard time in this hospital. They give me a hard time in this hospital, a certain portion of it, because they can't call me John. I had a nurse, because of an incident that occurred when I was explaining to the charge nurse who ran the floor in the absence of the manager and the other supervisors not being there in the evening, what happened, tell me, shut up. And then when I kept talking to the charge nurse, she leaned over in front of the charge nurse and said, didn't I tell you, shut up?
A nurse said that to you?
Yes.
As a patient?
Yes. Yes. Didn't I tell you, shut up? And stalked out the room. Now, there's a number of things that's involved in that, because I am a former administrator in healthcare settings. So consequently, where is this supervisor exercise any control over her? Where does this nurse get off telling me that I don't have the right to say what I have to say? Why do I have to go through this every time I go in this hospital? I've seen some improvements in this hospital physically. It's cleaner now. But I do know, and why I don't understand this is, the most traumatic time in anybody's life, especially when they have chronic heart disease like I do, is when they have to enter in the hospital, because they never know if they're coming back out of there.
And they're vulnerable. Believe believe me, it's
Well,
a terrible time.
my friend continued to tell me something. The next morning, she came in there and we were talking about this, and I got some discomfort, not pain, but discomfort, and I wanted nitro. Now, I had my own nitro, but to go along with their rules, they have to take note of that when they give it to me. She goes across, because I'm right across, you saw where my room was because you were there, it was right across from the nurse's station. She goes across and tells them the patient over there is having some pain, some discomfort, and she said there was about 15 or 20 people in there. And they said, is that your patient? Is that your patient? And it went right down the line. She's furious. She got no response from them. Not one person moved. Not one person got up to move.
I just want to be clear about this. You mean that they were talking among themselves in terms of whose
Right.
patient you were?
Right.
Is that
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And nobody came.
Right.
Now, unbeknownst to me, she had done this.
I'm assuming that all of this was reported, right?
This part I just got.
Oh, okay.
I met with some people
Oh, right.
about this, but it's an ongoing problem. And what's interesting in this, Larry, is that each time I've been on this floor, McClure 5, and I'm going to say the name today, McClure 5, the best nurses I've had to take care of me have been from Canada. They don't have a problem.
Why am I not surprised by that? Oh, why?
I mean,
What?
I've been going out in this hospital
Oh,
because
yeah.
I have some doctors involved in my health care that I think are the best I've ever seen. And you know how hard I am about health care. That are the best I've seen. And one of the major reasons for me staying here
John,
is because of them.
Let me tell you something. I've told you over and over again, you're very, very fortunate to have
Right.
the people that you have
Right.
taking care of you. Because
But
you
I have
two gems.
you
have two gems.
have
okay?
three,
okay.
yeah, person team.
I know of two.
And I got another person who you both know is always coming down there peeking over everybody's shoulder
Well,
to
I
make
know
sure.
that.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate in that way,
you
and
are.
I'm not willing.
Indeed.
And let me be really clear with you, for selfish purposes,
Yeah.
I am not willing to give that up.
Yeah.
I am not assured of that when I go someplace else.
Yes, that is correct. Believe
And
me.
let me also point out that none of these people are black.
That's true.
But I have
That's true.
a doctor.
That's true.
She knows more in the 8 years that she's been taking care of me than a lot of the other doctors know about what affects me as a black man and the diseases that I'm most vulnerable to.
Right.
She's one of the few people in this state that I've seen take that time. I've talked to other black people, but that hospital has a hardcore group of people. And at the center of every good treatment, as you know in all your years of experience, is the nursing staff.
Oh, yeah.
They have so mistreated the nursing staff in this hospital that they may have to do something different. The other thing is, I have a hard time, because I'm from the old school, when I look down the hallway, I can't pick the nurses and the professionals out from the goddamn patients. I'm going to say it that way. There is a lack of professionalism that still exists in that hospital that is not good for patient care. And I'll challenge anybody who wants me to have an open debate about it. You know, and I'm going to tell you, coming in my room and calling me John does not make me feel chummy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm so frustrated by that I don't know what to do, because
And-
I have lectured to groups in the hospital. I've been called in by various departments to give a lecture in the cultural aspects of healthcare, and so in the multicultural aspects of healthcare. I have lectured to nursing classes, nursing students who are going to be in that hospital. I have knocked myself out to try to help them understand that black people do not want to be called by their first name.
And one is because the historical aspects of it,
Of course. Oh, my.
where you and I watched our grown-up parents
I can't change. I mean,
having to call white people Mr. and Miss their whole life, Well, everybody called them boy, girl,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Jim and Joan, or nigga, whatever they wanted to call them.
Oh, yeah.
And consequently,
it is so
it's
frustrating,
offensive
John.
to me.
It is so frustrating that I sit there sometime and I won't even answer when they call my name. I just won't answer.
And
That
what
can
else
only
is
be-
offensive
that
to
can
me
only be detrimental to me in the long run.
Is-
But what the heck?
is the possibility that
stand
some
it.
people who work there may think that they're smart by that I'm not aware that, you know, doctors have this code that they don't tell on each other, you know that.
Yeah, I know.
But nurses have this code too. They're like the thin blue line. They're like the policemen in the communities. They don't want to confront each other about their behavior. And when it comes to race, they're no different than the rest of America when it comes to race.
Well, of course they are. I mean, they're part of a society. and as I keep saying, all of us
And I've
carry this
had-
baggage.
I've had
no way
numerous
around
stories given
But
to
that
me.
doesn't mean you can't learn.
Well, but it goes on in this hospital all the time. And then I live in a community where black people don't even understand that when you're sick, that you and the sick, you're in the hospital. You know, you were there to witness that. Person comes in my room and insists that I talk business.
Yeah.
Calls me later and wants to scream at me on the telephone.
Yeah.
There is a kind of uncaring, and then there's like a malaise. This is why I'm talking about the professionalism, Larry, and you and I talk about this all the time. It's so important in this whole aspect. There is not only race, but there is a lack of professionalism that is appalling. I had a friend in the past year who was injured very badly in a mountain bike accident. I told you about that a long time ago. But anyway, his girlfriend insisted, she's about to become his wife, that he be airlifted, he'll be, taken into
Right.
Dartmouth-Hitchcock. Now, we walk into Dartmouth-Hitchcock, four of us, to go see him. They told us how many people could come in the room. I never had that happen at Fletcher Island.
Right.
What the visiting hours were. He wasn't in an ICU or in a key care unit. The nurses looked like nurses. The doctors looked like doctors. The technicians looked like technicians. And the hospital was clean from top to bottom. And what I'm hearing from a lot of my friends, both black and white in this state, that a lot of people who have the choice and who have the ability are moving their care over to Dartmouth-Hitchcock.
Yeah, I've heard that too, from a number of people.
And that's sad.
From a number of people. Well, I don't, again, I mean, I'm terribly frustrated because I know that various departments have held seminars, have brought people in, I mean, in addition to myself, have brought people in to speak to the group, whatever it is.
But when you were,
I know that's happening, but nothing changed.
when you were a manager,
I don't understand it.
you have been a manager,
Yes,
and something went wrong in your department.
yes.
How did you change it?
By attending to it immediately.
And doing what?
Well, I mean,
If you don't want to do what?
right,
Goodbye.
right,
Get your hat.
right. I mean, here is what we are striving for. If you can't be a member of that
That
particular
team.
movement, then you have to find something else to do.
That's right.
And that's all there is to it. And that's what accountability is all about.
That's what
That's
accountability is all about, isn't it?
And you see, what bothers me about this is that we have the models. Digital was a perfect
Oh,
model
yeah.
when they were here. They wiped out sexist and racist language in the workplace in 1 year, and they worked it out because the head of that whole unit said, "Here's where we're going."
We're down to our last minute.
Okay, well,
And
this seems like
I am
like
sure,
an hour of frustration.
and I'm
you know.
going to now, no, I just want to make
Okay,
an appeal
go
on
ahead.
your half.
You sum it up.
Because I really think that if you care about social justice in this state, and I'm going to use the word social justice, that more of you will come out from behind those pillows and those barriers you've been hiding from and support Dr. McCrory in this fight to straighten out this Human Rights Commission, because it's key in the social responsibilities of this state. So consequently, I want to close with saying goodbye for Dr. McCrory and myself. This is number 14, and we will be doing number 15 in another month or so, and hoping to bring some new people to the table.
Good idea, John.
Right.
Thank you all for listening.
And thank you again for listening. Okay?